All right, they are here. I am talking about the ZULU6 HDX Pro model that I'm really excited to break down today. So I got my hands on this last month. I'm recording this at the end of October. I got these at the very tail end of September. They initially came out in August, but they did a very, very limited release. So I didn't get my hands on them at that point. I was able to get my hands on them in September when there were a few more available on the virtual shelves, so to speak. So I did not have the original ZULU6 model. As a matter of fact, I was just about to buy those and I was tuning into a podcast and not a 6 hour related podcast, but they inadvertently mentioned, oh, I wonder one of the new ZULU6s are coming out because they were some early testers and they weren't supposed to say that. This was in July, I believe, that I heard this podcast. And so I ended up not buying the original ZULU6s from Sig Sauer because they had mentioned a little bit about these ones being an upgraded model. So I held off and I'm very, very glad I did, because if I had bought that original ZULU6 and then, 2 months later, this was available, I would have been very angry, very upset. Not that the other ones were bad. It's just that, again, right, if a new model had just come out, it would have been a little bit frustrating. But anyway, let's talk about these ones right here. So really, the main difference with these ones and the original ZULU6s is that they are bigger because they have made the lenses bigger. So this is a 50mm objective lens right here, which means more light can get in there, which means that in low light conditions, these are going to perform better. And there's also greater magnification options for this one. You still have some of the similar and the same magnification options from the original ZULU6s, but these ones, you can also get some bigger ones. I personally have the 16 magnification option right here, which I love, and I'll get into a little bit more detail about that. Now, really quick, before I kind of keep on going on about this, in terms of the quality of the glass, I'm going to make this exactly how I did my review of my Maven binoculars, which, by the way, if you do not see those, you can go ahead and check those out over here. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm a glass expert and I can talk about being forged in Japan and all this kind of stuff and how that benefits you, right? I'm going to give you a review from a layman standpoint. I'm sure there's going to be other videos out there that go deep into the glass of these. So what I will say about these is that they are very good glass. Are they as good as my Mavens? No, but it's not a significant difference, right? I would say my Mavens, they definitely beat these out from an edge-to-edge clarity standpoint. But at the same time, I do feel that edge-to-edge clarity is a little bit overrated. It is nice, don't get me wrong, but it's a little bit overrated because at the end of the day, our eyes are still focused in the middle. It's very rare that we're actually looking at the edges of our binoculars, and the clarity is still good enough that if you happen to see something on the edge, you'll still notice it, and then you just obviously move your binoculars so that you're actually seeing, what it is that you saw out of the corner of your eye. So overall, very good glass. You're not going to be disappointed. Again, if you have something that's Maven or Swarovski, I don't think it's going to be the same quality, but it's pretty darn close, and I find it hard to believe that you'd be disappointed, especially given the stabilization technology that these have. The other big difference between these ones and the original Zulus is that these actually take AA batteries. So 2 AA batteries, that's what these little holes are right here. And so that's where you're going. I like that simply because I forget the model of the batteries you had to use for the original ZULU6s, but it wasn't a standard battery like a AAA or AA, whatever it is. It's one of those specialized batteries just for electronics. But now, right, we all have AA's sitting around the house, and so it's just easier to kind of get some batteries for this right here. All right, cool. So I think that's a good breakdown from just kind of like an overall landscape. Now let's talk about what makes these binoculars cool, which, if you don't know, the previous model and this model, of course, they have the image stabilization technology. So, I'm sure you've dealt with it. You're looking through your binoculars and they are shaking everywhere. And so you can kind of see what you're trying to look at, but it's also very uncomfortable, this, that, and the other. Well, with these, you flip on this switch right here. You see the green light turn on. And when you're staring through the binoculars, your image is then stabilized. So it's a really, really cool feature, and something that, in my opinion, is honestly just a complete game changer, regardless of what it is that you're doing with your binoculars, whether you're bird watching, hunting, nature observing, it doesn't matter, right? Having that image stabilization is really cool to have in your pocket. So, in terms of using these binoculars, I did learn that even though that technology is really cool, because of that technology, at least for me, in my experience, I can't use these like I would use a regular pair of binoculars. I do have to use them a little bit differently. So, in my experience, if you are looking through these with the image stabilization on, you have to treat them a little bit differently, because I learned very quickly, again, this is at least for me, I don't know if it's going to be the same for everyone, but it's worth noting is that I initially was getting some motion sickness while looking through these, because when you turn on the image stabilization, right, it's very tempting to just kind of move it around and kind of test it out and see how cool it is. But when that happens, there's like this weird like whiplash effect, is kind of the best way to describe it, where you're panning across, and let's say you quickly switch directions, your image is literally just gonna like stretch out in one direction and then quickly whip back in the direction that you are now going in. And that, made me nauseous initially. And so, again, as tempting as it is, don't go crazy. Don't start moving this around all over the place. But where that can happen inadvertently, right, when you're not even trying, is when you actually initially put these up to your eye, right? Because it's moving fast, it's moving fast. And so like here, once you get to this point, it's still gonna have that whiplash effect where it's gonna like go up and then down. And again, that can be a little bit nauseating. So for me, what I do with these is that I actually have my eyes closed as I'm pulling them up to my eyes. So I have my eyes closed, they're right here, and now I open them. For me, that completely fixed the whiplash effect, and I was able to get rid of any nauseousness or dizziness that I was experiencing. So that is something that I definitely do recommend if you experience something similar. So really the two main things are, don't go crazy, right? Just move the binoculars like you would any normal pair, right? It's very tempting to kind of go nuts, but again, don't do that. And at least for me, it was very helpful to have my eyes closed, put them up, and then open my eyes, and then I would get rid of that whiplash effect. So once you've crossed that bridge, again, the performance of these are just really, really cool. I absolutely love them. There's so much versatility because, I have some tripod for binoculars, but on the trip that I used these, I wasn't able to use a tripod because I have not found any company that has a bino adapter for this model. There's bino adapter for the previous model, the non-pro model, but for the pro model, since these just came out, I have yet to find a bino adapter, which, isn't too surprising. And so I couldn't use my tripod, but honestly, it wasn't that big of a deal. What I ended up doing was I used my trekking poles as a monopod, essentially, as you might. So I'll get the trekking pole, put this on top, and then I would just glass this way. And honestly, I was able to do that with no problems. And I've done that before with regular binoculars that don't have the image stabilization technology, and that was a nightmare of experience. But with these ones, I was perfectly fine. That being said, once there is a bino adapter, I will be getting those because, right, it's about the versatility, right? Yes, the technology is really cool, but I don't want to 100% be relying on the technology. So I think hooking up this to a tripod and glassing that way, right, that's still going to be, maybe 80%. But, for me, my tripod, it's a sitting tripod. It's not tall enough. It doesn't get tall enough to, look through while standing. But sometimes I get tired and I want to stretch my legs and stuff like that. So that's where this is going to come in, right? So if I have these on the tripod, I'm not going to be using the image stabilization technology, but then I want to get up, I want to stretch, but I still want to keep on glassing. Then perfect. I'll stand up, switch the image stabilization on, and then I can keep on glassing while I stand. And then also, it's the best for those quick moments when you see something off in the distance or there's something you want to check out, right? You just pull them out of your bino harness, turn on the image stabilization, put these up to your eyes, and then boom, you have very clear and steady image stabilization to, stare whatever it is that you want to be looking at. And that to me was always a very big frustration with my previous binoculars, and it's not a knock on those binoculars, is that this technology didn't exist before. But whenever I was in that scenario of like, okay, I just want to quickly put up my binoculars and look at this one thing, I was always like, man, like, I know I'm staring, but it's just uncomfortable. I don't even know if I'm getting a clear picture of what I'm looking at. But with these, you definitely are. And so overall, I am very, very happy with these. I'm for sure going to be using these the vast majority of time, and I'm just very excited to keep on using these out in the field. One thing I did forget to mention, the weight, it is a little bit heavy. I'm not gonna lie. This is comes in a little bit over 2 pounds, which is heavier than my previous binos, but it's also not overwhelming, especially when it's in your bino harness and stuff like that. So really, if this is something that you've been curious about, I personally do highly recommend. The glass on these is a higher quality glass than the previous model, bigger objective lens, which means better performance in low light. You get the image stabilization, and so it's just really, really fun to use, and I highly recommend it. So that is the breakdown for these binos. I hope from a layman standpoint, this was very helpful and useful for you. But if you are considering these and you still have some additional questions, just let me know in the comments below, and I will be happy to answer them for you. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and I will see you next time.